Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Fatima Ayupinasti from batch 27 with student ID 27023800683. And today I will be presenting a material from International Political Economy courses where we're going to analyze the massive flow of capital into Southeast Asia's electric vehicle sector through a critical political economy lens. So, Southeast Asia, particularly in Indonesia, with its vast nickel reserve, and also Thailand with its established automotive manufacturing base, is a crucial node in the global green transition. At face value, this surge in transitional investment from major firms like Hyundai, BYD, and VinFast promises sustainable growth, technological advancement, and also a pathway out of a traditional development constraints. Our central SI argues that this investment boom, rather than ushering in equitable development, fundamentally reforms see Southeast Asia's subordinate positions within the global capitalist system. So, despite this monumental capital injection, the reality of EV development in Southeast Asia is characterized by deep asymmetries, leading to persistently uneven development and profound social inequality. So, this paradox, growth occurring alongside escalating structural constraints, that is, requires a specialized theoretical framework. And we understand that this dynamic by applying Susan Strange theory of structural power framed within the context of hyperglobalizations, the inability of Southeast Asia states to fundamentally challenge these established structures ensures that the primary beneficiaries remain the transnational capital fraction and their domestic oligarchy ally. And to explain this persistent subordination, we utilize Susan Strange's theory of structural power, which she defines as the ability to shape and determine the structures of the global political economy in which all actors must operate. This power is far more fundamental than simply just commanding another state, which is relational power. And this structure power is extend across the four interconnected pillars, which is the first one is production, where it's actually control over what is produced and how rewards are distributed. And the second one, we have finance, where control over credit and capital flows. And the third one, we have knowledge, control over the technology, information, and also intellectual property or IP. And the last one is security, where the control is over stability and the threat of violence. So this framework operates within the era of hyperglobalization, characterized by the accelerating spread of trade, production, and finance, which result in developing nations like those in the Southeast Asia opting out of the world market is no longer an option, and making them involuntary players who are typically the recurring losers in this system. Okay, for the next slide, the production structure. determines who benefits from the new global divisions of labor. And in the EV boom, this structure maintains Southeast Asia's subservient role. Although countries like Indonesia possess crucial inputs, such as the world's largest nickel resource, the structural arrangement convenes Southeast Asia to low value added activities. Indonesia's role is primarily that of a supplier of raw material and base manufacturing. And the high value process design, intellectual property, and also sophisticated component production and remain centrally controlled by translational firm or MNCs. This limited transfers of advanced productive technology confirm the argument that Southeast Asia is merely a repository for low to intermediate value-added production and perpetuating the middle income trap. And this fails to generate that permanent revolution in the means of production necessary for true substantive economic development. So, Strange considered the finance structure paramount, arguing that those controlling credit and capital dictate the rules of the game. To attract massive EV investment like Hyundai's, it's about $1.55 billion commitment. Southeast Asia states that are compelled to transform their governance, adopting neoliberal discipline to maintain global competitiveness. And this pressure translates into the extensive provision of fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, such as tax holidays and duty waivers to corporate investors. So this adjustment shifts the state's role from a developmental stage directing national accumulation to a regulatory stage that facilitates transactional flows, and Strange term this a defective state. The financial dependency on foreign capital ensures that the power to grant lucrative and politically connected business factions, reinforcing existing wealth and concentrations. So, the control over knowledge, technology, and know-how and IP is decisive in preventing substantive development. While investment often include rhetorical promises of technology transfers, the reality is that the most valuable proprietary knowledge, core design, and battery chemistry remains locked away under the control of the transnational firms. Southeast Asia suffers from a structural knowledge deficit, evidenced by low rates of domestic patent filings, and this prevents indigenous firms from moving up to the value chain and capturing the highest reward. So consequently, the EV investment locked Southeast Asia into a position of perpetual technological dependency, and countries are adept at assembly, but they remain reliant on external sources because for innovation and upgrading. And this dependency is accepted because the short-term price of opting out foregoing job creation is judged to be high. And for next one, the environmental consequences of the EV transition expose that profound contradiction tied to strange security structure which ensures stability for capital, and the shift to EVs superficially justified as green, merely trade one hazard for another. The intensive extraction of nickel. This is explained by the theory of hyperdegradation at chapter 15, which argues that extreme environmental damage is intrinsically linked to the region's extractive mode of capitalist accumulation. And the environmental cause, deforestation, pollution, are borne by the local, often poor populations, and meanwhile, the substantial profit are captured by the political business oligarchy who control access to the resources. The security structure is often instrumentalized to ensure the stability needed to maintain these destructive modes of accumulation. Confirm that the development here is inherently unfair and environmentally unsustainable. So, the structure constraints of hyperglobalization are specifically So, the structural constraints of hyperglobalizations are specifically manifested through two supporting dynamics. The first one is regulatory regionalism on Chapter 8. This involves state agencies formulating standardized, often neoliberal rules at the regional level, compelling member states to internalize these regulations domestically. This mechanism facilitates transnational capital flows, often overriding protectionist local interests. And number two, hyper degradation, which is on chapter 15. As discussed, this highlights that extreme environmental degradation is driven by the profit motives and extractive industries and allied elites who resist environmental governance unless it benefits their accumulation regime. So these theories demonstrate the constraints which Southeast Asia operates, while strange structural power theory reveals who controls the architecture of constraints, ultimately explaining the persistence of uneven development in the EV sector. And last but not least, in summary, the EV investment flow reinforced rather than the dismantled existing structural inequalities. The production and knowledge structures ensure transactional capital maintains control over the high-value components, reinforcing the middle income trap. The finance structure facilitated by regulatory regionalism creates a defective state serving capital interests. Finally, the security and environment structures underscore that hyper-degradation is the cost borne by locals to fund the oligarchy's accumulation regime. The unevenness of EV development is not transient. It is a direct reflection of structural constraints imposed by those who command the production, finance, and knowledge architecture of the global political economy. And Southeast Asia remains a involuntary player and a recurring loser in this global economic casino, unable to negotiate the terms of its own development away from subordination and structural unfairness. Thank you.